Well, hello again. This is the latter part of week 1, semester 2. Mr. Marks speaking to you. We're going to go and finish up our presentation on rhetoric. We started with our 3 major rhetorical appeals: ethos, pathos, logos. We looked at them in advertisements and in parts of famous speeches. Mainly, you went and analyzed Franklin Delano Roosevelt's post Pearl Harbor attack speech, and you looked at where he made appeals to pathos, using pathos, heavy-weighted diction, words like attack, right? That there's a connotation there. How he built up his own ethos. How did he do that? And where did he throw down the facts? All of these are in an effort to get us on his side. We talk to people to get them to be on our side. And now we're going to finish up our presentation looking at these things called rhetorical devices. So they're underneath those overarching umbrella appeals, and they're like arrows in a quiver, right? We can do so much with them, and they further substantiate, they further support, they further provide strength to your appeals, ethos, pathos, logos. Okay, so I digress. Sorry, everybody. Let's move on with our worksheet, our guided reading handout that we're filling out. So the definition: any device, a figure of speech, used by the speaker to help them affect their specific audience in meaningful ways. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, right? A type of parallel structure called chiasmus. That's powerful. That made us really believe in Kennedy. It made us humble that we were perhaps asking too much and not doing enough, right? Anyway, using these devices helps to make their text more persuasive and memorable, their text or their speaking publicly, or their advertisement. And then thirdly, incorporating them might also help the speaker, you, establish a specific appeal, ethos, pathos, or logos. So simplistic types. You're probably familiar with a few of the basic types of rhetorical devices: simile, metaphor, personification, allusion. These are typically taught as literary devices. However, any figure of speech that is being used specifically to persuade an audience is a rhetorical device. And we just use persuasion. We've learned it, I think, implicitly by example our whole lives, and now we're looking at it explicitly, all right, over the table. Let's take a look at juxtaposition. One rhetorical device, our first one. Fill it out on your form. By placing 2 contrasting images or ideas next to each other for dramatic effect, we influence others. Here's an example. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the, here's the juxtaposition, the opposite, to end the long night of their captivity, right? Like positivity with negativity, light, hope, a beacon to the darkness of night. You see those 2 contrasting juxtaposed images there? That's called juxtaposition. MLK. Fantastic. Okay, anaphora, the second rhetorical device that we're going to be looking at today. Anaphora is repeating the same word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses, sentences, or paragraphs. Before we look at that, know that you can pause this, of course, at any time in order to complete your guided notes. So here's an example of anaphora repeating the same word or phrase at the beginning. When you have a wonderful mother-in-law who takes sides with you and squabbles with her own daughter, that's something. When you have a father and a mother who work all their lives so you can have an education and build your body, it's a blessing. When you have a wife who has been a tower of strength and shown more courage than you dreamed, that's the finest I know. Lou Gehrig's Farewell to Baseball. Remember that? When he's like, Today, I feel, like the luckiest, man, in the world, right? Echoing off of Yankee Stadium. Okay, epistrophe is the opposite. This is when we're repeating the same word or phrase at the end of successive clauses, sentences, or paragraphs. If you hear the dogs, keep going. If you see the torches in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting after you, keep going. Don't ever stop. Keep going. If you want a taste of freedom, keep going. And even in the darkest of moments, that is what Americans have done. We have found the faith to keep going. Can't help but think that Hillary Clinton here is giving us a bit of an allusion to maybe the Underground Railroad. So there's a lot happening there in terms of rhetoric, obviously, an appeal to pathos, what makes us feel something about that issue of slavery in our country and around the world. And then, of course, she's using this specific device within, underneath that pathos appeal. That device is epistrophe, where she's repeating, keep going. Did you see that? I'm sure that you did, you brilliant people. Okay, let's take a look at euphemism. Oh my gosh! Let's take a look at euphemism. It's taking something that would be particularly negative or big, perhaps. I don't really like the word negative here. I think euphemism can be a lot of things. Harsh, cruel, scary, but I mean, we say, what the frick? And phrasing it in a much more positive light. Here's an example. But I think they underestimate the American people. Americans do not respect believers of convenience. So Mitt Romney and his Faith in America speech. But I mean, if we think about the word frick and shoot, right? Euphemisms. Moving on. Hyperbole. Kidding, it's hyperbole. Man, I've told you a million times to not goof around with these kids. Hyperbole is an exaggeration used to emphasize a particular point or argument. Here's an example. But for all those who scratched and clawed their way to get a piece of the American dream, there were many who didn't make it. Those who were ultimately defeated in one way or another by discrimination. Barack Obama in his More Perfect Union speech. Scratched and clawed is that hyperbolic speech, that very exaggerated speech, right? People putting one foot in front of the other to pursue the American dream, working. I wonder how that would seem if I substitute working for scratched and clawed. But for all those who worked their way to get a piece of the American dream, it just doesn't have the same effect without the hyperbole, scratched and clawed, right? Labored. All right, parallelism, one of my favorite rhetorical devices underneath the rhetorical appeals. These devices like arrows in a quiver. Abraham Lincoln, Gettysburg Address. Anywhere, parallelism, constructing different parts of a complex sentence or different parts of sentence structure in an equal manner by using the same grammatical structures. Here's an example. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. So what are the repeated parts of the sentences? That word that we, that this, that government. So that's repeated portions. And then we also have shall not, shall have, shall not again. By the way, of the people, by the people, for the people, these are all repeated clause structure, right? That girl, his face. Moving on. Rhetorical questions. Do I exist solely to repeat myself, right? Using hypothetical questions, ones where the answer is already implied, to add evidence to a critical argument. We're putting these parts of our notes into our guided reading. Handout. Here's an example. Rhetorical question. So not eliciting a response, one that's implied, okay? Nothing in life is worth dying for. When did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard around the world? The martyrs of history were not fools, and our honored dead who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis didn't die in vain. So all of those questions with those biblical and American heroes, should Moses have done that? Well, of course not. We all know no. Should Christ have refused? No, we needed him. We need him. Should the patriots, we're glad they didn't throw down their guns. So the answer is already implied. This is from Ronald Reagan's In a Time for Choosing. So not just did he use hypothetical questions as devices in rhetoric, but also the biblical allusion. What does that do for us? For us believers, it strengthens his ethos. We're like, we like this guy. He's referencing Moses and the cross. For all of us patriots, it makes us like him. His ethos gets bigger, right? And then also, there's some pathos words in there too, some heavy-weighted words. Martyrs, the idea of the shot heard around the world, that does something to us patriotically. We get emotional about that. Of course, religion, what's more pathos than that? So there's a lot happening there. Rhetorical appeals and the device. Hypothetical question. Thank you for not tuning me out. I feel like I'm boring myself. Let's keep going. Okay, understatement. Sometimes called litotes. It's using targeted phrasing to make a very important development or occurrence sound less important than it really is. I always remember this like this. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed, right? Instead of saying he is an idiot, right? Very harsh. We kind of understate his dullness by saying he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. I think I use this one all the time. Not that phrase, but litotes, understatement, rather than just kind of straight to the heart with my statement. But sometimes you want to consider your audience. You don't want to just throw down the big guns, right? So here's another example from John F. Kennedy's. What's going on here? Can I get that? Whatever. Okay. The purpose of these bases can be none other than to provide a nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere. I don't know. I'm thinking for this example, maybe he could have said the purpose of these bases is to destroy the Western Hemisphere, to destroy Western society or American society, right? But he didn't. He understated it. And maybe the reason for that is because we were in a very tense time, Cold War, right? This is Kennedy knowing that the Soviets are listening to his speech, and maybe him being wise and not throwing it down. And then we look at another leader, Reagan, who, where it comes to a head and he says, tear these walls down, right? So two different styles of speaking there, pardon me. All right, let's look at amplification, which is repeating an important word or phrase while adding more details and examples to it each time. This is a cool rhetorical device. Of course, the answer to the slavery question was already embedded within our Constitution, a Constitution that had its very core, the ideal of equal citizenship under the law, a Constitution that promised its people liberty and justice, and a union that could be and should be perfected over time. Barack Obama. His writers, fantastic. Amplification, write this down. Paradox. Contradictory ideas that might sound illogical, but with further investigation might possibly be true. Ooh, Steve Jobs. Let's check this out. So, paradox. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it, and that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Wow. I felt conflicted while reading that. It made me jarred to my core because we don't want to discuss death as being a positive thing. Look what he does there with paradox, contradictory ideas. That is powerful to make your audience feel to its core like that. Remember that one. Remember them all. Polysyndeton. I referenced this semester 1. Including more conjunctions than necessary between successive phrases within a sentence. Fathers and mothers, if you have children, they must come first. You must read to your children, and you must hug your children, and you must love your children, but they must not. Yet they must, for, got it? Barbara Bush in her commencement address to Wellesley College. Here's another one. I have it on my wall behind my head. He hit the shark without hope, but with resolution and complete malignancy. The overuse of conjunctions. What does that do for our writing or our speaking? Right? It's almost jarring in itself as you're continuing on this this long phrase. It's making us feel winded, perhaps, or appear to be so, like we're really working to get our point across. That could be one, right? This maybe a sense of urgency in there. Ace and Deaton. That's when we fail to include conjunctions between successive phrases within a sentence. He was tall, dark, handsome. I'm reading some Raymond Chandler, some 1940s detective novel stuff, pulpy, very, very fantastic. Great writer, maybe not so pulpy. He does this a lot, right? The way he writes, you know, tall drink of water, not too sharp, well dressed. All right, here's another example from Atala Shabazz in her remarks at Coretta Scott King's funeral. Purposefully not including conjunctions. To what end? What does it do for us? Let's read it and see. How many of you here know that no matter how mighty the man in your midst is, that he could not do it without the caress, the wink, the unconditional love, the pat on the back, the sustenance, the maintenance of the woman in his life? Oh, powerful stuff happening there, not just in her device, but also in the appeals throughout. Love that. So we're going to have some practice. Let's take a look at some advertisements, and we're almost coming to a close. And just like part one of these guided notes, I'm going to go and give you a link for Coretta Scott King. You will click it and complete the handout and turn it into the module in Canvas. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Traveling fruit. Traveling fruit. Here it is. Explain which device or vices this Gatorade ad includes. That's funny, I said vices. There's some vice in there, I think. Provide evidence in your explanation. So we've got a pineapple that looks like a jetliner that's spewing out smoke, and it says traveling fruits cause pollution. Woo! Wow. A lot happening there. Traveling fruits cause pollution. What's happening there? What device? So we're talking about devices here, not appeals, not ethos, pathos, logos, kairos stuff. So what device do you see? Okay, Little Mermaid ad. Explain which device this advertisement includes. Provide evidence in your explanation. Water. It's part of your world. Keep it clean. Playing on the song. Would you like me to sing it to you? I want to go where the people are. Da 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 da. Moving on. Samsung. Again, explain the blah blah blah. Okay, motion control, voice control. Motion control, voice control. Look at that T-Rex. What a beautiful creature. Number 4, Nike. Explain which device. Provide evidence. Stop dreaming, start working. Stop dreaming, start working. Stop dreaming, start working. What device is being used there? Honda. Certified, pre-owned. Certified, pre-owned. Why don't they just say used, you know? It's just used. Someone else used this, but they said pre-owned. It sounds nice, doesn't it? All right, so here is where my video will stop. Click the link in the module attached to where you found this video, and you're going to follow her 10 Commandments of Vietnam by Miss Coretta Scott King. You're going to find and record at least 5 different rhetorical devices, not appeals. Then explain how these devices add importance or meaning to King's message. Thank you for those of you who have battled through me right now. I really, really appreciate what you bring to our learning environment and community. God bless you all, and God save us all. Respect.